The observation deck of the Galactic Council station hummed with the usual mixture of languages, clicking mandibles, and translated thoughts. Commander Zethrak of the Corvin Empire stood with his forearms crossed, his segmented carapace gleaming under the artificial lights. His compound eyes fixed on a viewing screen where a small human vessel drifted through the debris field of what had once been the Terran colony of New Cambridge. The human female inside the ship was alone. Her life support systems flickered weakly, and her communications array had been destroyed in the attack. Zethrak had seen this scenario play out countless times across his 3 centuries of military service. A lone survivor, cut off from their people, with no hope of rescue before their resources ran out. The mathematics were simple and brutal. She has perhaps 48 standard hours before her oxygen recyclers fail completely, observed Junior Analyst Plek, a young Corvin who had been assigned to Zethrak's monitoring station. Should we dispatch a rescue craft? Zethrak's mandibles clicked in what his species used as a negative gesture. The Vrexian raiding party that destroyed the colony is still in the adjacent system. Any vessel we send would be detected and destroyed. The Council has already determined that one life does not justify the risk of sparking a larger conflict. But she is still transmitting her distress beacon, Plex said, his voice carrying the uncertainty of youth. She does not know it is broken, Zethrak replied. The signal never leaves her immediate vicinity. She believes help is coming. It is perhaps a mercy that she will die with hope rather than despair. The commander turned his attention back to his tactical displays, dismissing the doomed human from his thoughts. He had learned long ago that sentiment was a luxury that military officers could not afford. The galaxy was vast, cruel, and indifferent. The strong survived, the weak perished, and humans, despite their recent emergence onto the galactic stage, were demonstrably weak. Their homeworld had nearly destroyed itself multiple times before they achieved spaceflight. Their biology was fragile, requiring narrow environmental parameters to survive. They had no natural armor, no redundant organs, no ability to process toxins that most species considered mild irritants. They were slow to heal, quick to panic, and their governments were fractured and inefficient. When humanity had first made contact with the Galactic Council 15 years prior, Zethrak had been among the diplomatic envoy sent to evaluate them. He had walked the streets of their cities, observed their military capabilities, and reviewed their historical records. His conclusion had been unambiguous. Humanity was a weak species that would likely remain a minor player in galactic affairs, assuming they survived at all. The Vrexians had apparently reached the same conclusion, which was why they had felt emboldened to attack human colonies on the frontier. New Cambridge had been the 3rd such attack in as many months, and the human government's response had been predictably ineffective. They had filed formal complaints with the Council, requested assistance, and pleaded for intervention. The Council had offered sympathy and promises to investigate, but no action. This was the way of things. The strong made their own justice, and the weak hoped for mercy. Hours passed. Zethrak completed his shift reports, attended a briefing on Vrexian movement patterns, and returned to his quarters for a rest cycle. When he returned to the observation deck 16 hours later, he was mildly surprised to see that the human vessel was still transmitting. "The female is still alive?" he asked Plek, who had apparently also returned for another shift. "Yes, Commander. She has been quite resourceful. She managed to cannibalize her propulsion systems to extend her life support by an additional 20 hours. She is also collecting ice particles from the debris field to supplement her water supply." Zethrak felt something that might have been admiration flicker through his consciousness. Impressive improvisation. It will not save her, but it demonstrates intelligence. She has also been attempting repairs to her communications array, Plek continued. Of course, she lacks the necessary components, but she continues to try. The commander settled into his station and pulled up the detailed sensor readings from the human ship. The vessel was a small courier craft, designed for transporting passengers and light cargo between orbital stations. It had minimal defensive capabilities and was never meant for extended independent operation. Yet the human inside had managed to extend her survival window through sheer ingenuity. He accessed the biographical data that the Council maintained on registered human vessels. The woman's name was Dr. Sarah Chun, age 34 standard years, a xenobiologist who had been conducting research on the terraforming efforts at New Cambridge. She had been in orbit conducting satellite surveys when the Vrection attack began. She had witnessed the bombardment from above, helpless to intervene as the settlement below was reduced to molten slag. Zethrak's mandibles twitched. He wondered if watching one species die while being unable to help was worse than dying quickly. Perhaps her extended survival was not a blessing after all. Another day passed. Dr. Chun continued to defy the odds, implementing increasingly desperate measures to maintain her life support. She had reduced the temperature in her cabin to just above freezing to conserve power. She had placed herself into a medically induced low metabolic state to reduce her oxygen consumption. She had even begun breaking down non-essential equipment to harvest trace gases from their components. She should have been dead 10 hours ago. Plek observed with something approaching awe. How is she still functioning? Zethrak studied the readings more carefully. The human's vital signs were dangerously weak. Her body temperature had dropped below safe levels. Her heart rate was barely detectable. Yet she persisted. Humans call it stubbornness, Zethrak said quietly. They have a cultural tendency to refuse to accept inevitable outcomes. It is simultaneously their greatest strength and their most tragic flaw. As he spoke, something changed on the sensor display. Multiple new contacts had appeared at the edge of the system, emerging from faster-than-light travel. Zethrak's combat instincts immediately categorized the signatures. 3 vessels, medium displacement, using drive systems that matched human specifications, but with power outputs far beyond what the Council's intelligence suggested humanity possessed. Plek, verify those sensor readings, Zethrak ordered, his voice sharp. The analyst's manipulators flew across his console. Confirmed, Commander. 3 human vessels, configuration unknown. They're not broadcasting standard identification codes. Power signatures indicate military-grade systems. They are moving directly toward Dr. Chin's position at high acceleration. Zethrak felt his respiratory spiracles constrict. Alert the Council Defense Coordinator. We may have a situation developing. Yes, Commander. Sir, should we warn them about the Vrection presence in the adjacent system? They must already know, Zethrak replied. They came through the same approach vector the Vrections used. This was not coincidence. This was planning. The 3 human ships moved with purpose and precision, their formation suggesting military training. As they approached Dr. Chin's drifting vessel, the lead ship detached a small craft that matched velocities and began docking procedures. The entire operation took less than 4 minutes, a level of efficiency that Zethrak had rarely seen outside of elite special operations units. The doctor is being taken aboard, Plek reported. Her life signs are stabilizing. They have her. Zethrak should have felt relief. Instead, he felt unease. Something about the cold professionalism of the rescue operation troubled him. These were not the ships of a desperate government scrambling to save one of their citizens. These were warships that had come with a specific purpose. Commander, the human vessels are changing course, Plek said, his voice rising slightly. They are heading toward the Vrection position. Zethrak's unease crystallized into alarm. Give me a direct link to those ships. Now, they are not responding to hails, sir. Then, broadcast on all frequencies. Warn them that the Vrections have a full raiding fleet in that system. 3 ships, even military vessels, cannot stand against those numbers. They will be destroyed. Plek worked his controls frantically. Broadcasting now, Commander. Still no response. On the display, the 3 human ships continued their steady acceleration toward the system boundary. They made no attempt to hide their approach, no effort at stealth or tactical maneuvering. They simply drove forward like a blade aimed at a target. Why would they commit suicide? Plek asked, They saved the doctor. They could escape. Why are they doing this? Zethrak did not answer immediately. He was remembering something from his time on Earth, a conversation with a human military officer who had been explaining their species' history. The officer had spoken of something called the Geneva Conventions, rules of warfare that humans had created for themselves. When Zethrak had asked what happened to those who violated these rules, the officer's face had become very still, very cold. "We make examples," the officer had said. "Send a priority message to the council," Zethrak ordered. "Tell them we may need to prepare for a significant incident. And give me everything we have on human military capabilities. Everything. I believe our intelligence may have been dangerously incomplete." The three ships crossed into the adjacent system, and the sensor displays showed them entering the range where the Vrexian fleet would detect them. Zethrak found himself unable to look away from the screens, watching as what he had assumed would be a brief and tragic engagement began to unfold. What he saw in the next few minutes would fundamentally change his understanding of humanity, and it would haunt him for the rest of his long life. He had believed the human woman was doomed, that her species was weak, that they would accept the destruction of their colonies with resigned protests and diplomatic complaints. He had been catastrophically wrong. The first indication came when the lead human vessel launched what appeared to be a standard missile spread toward the Vrexian fleet. Zethrak's tactical analysis system immediately began calculating trajectories and probable damage. The calculations never completed. The missiles didn't follow ballistic paths. They accelerated continuously, faster than any conventional drive should have allowed, and when they reached their targets, they didn't explode. They simply erased matter from existence. The Vrexian fleet had no time to react. One moment, 6 heavy cruisers and 14 escort vessels were holding position in a loose defensive formation. The next moment, 3 of the cruisers and 7 escorts ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded, simply gone, replaced by perfect spherical voids in space that collapsed in on themselves with bursts of radiation. Zethrak's mandibles locked in shock. What weapon was that? Plek analysis. The young analyst's voice shook. "I don't know, Commander. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. The target vessels didn't even have time to raise shields. There was no warning, no targeting lock detected. They just died." The remaining Vrexian ships scattered, their captains finally, recognizing they faced something beyond their understanding. They began emergency FTL jumps, trying to escape. The human vessels didn't pursue. They simply fired again. This time, the weapons were different. Beams of something that looked like concentrated starlight reached across the void and touched the fleeing Vrexian ships. When the beams made contact, the vessel's shields flared and died instantly. Their hulls began to glow, then melt, then boil away into vapor. The process took less than 3 seconds per target. "Those power outputs are impossible," Plek whispered. "Our projections said humanity didn't have the technology for weapons-grade, directed energy systems. They're at least a century away from developing something like this." Zethrak was recalculating everything he thought he knew. "Perhaps we were measuring the wrong things. We looked at their public infrastructure, their civilian technology, their commercial capabilities. We never considered that they might have separate, hidden military development." 2 Vrexian cruisers managed to complete their jump calculations and began to enter FTL. For a moment, Zethrak thought they might escape. Then space itself seemed to twist around them. The ships were pulled back into normal space, their FTL drives overloading catastrophically. The explosions were conventional, almost mundane compared to the weapons the humans had already displayed. "They have FTL interdiction technology," Zethrak said, his voice hollow. "They can prevent enemy vessels from escaping. We don't even have theoretical models for how that would work." The battle, if it could even be called that, was over in less than 8 minutes. 20 Vrexian warships had been reduced to debris and radiation. Not a single human vessel had been scratched. The 3 ships reformed their formation and began moving back toward the station where Zethrak watched. "They're coming here," Plek said, stating the obvious because his mind couldn't process anything more complex. Zethrak forced himself to think tactically despite the shock. Alert all station defense systems. No, wait. Belay that order. Do not activate defenses. If they wanted to destroy the station, we would already be dead. Open all communication channels. Make it clear we are not hostile. The human ships approached at a leisurely pace, as if they had all the time in the universe. When they reached what would normally be considered a threatening range, they stopped and, finally, responded to the station's hails. The face that appeared on Zethrak's screen was human, but, unlike Dr. Chen's soft features, this face was hard, angular, with eyes that seemed to look through rather than at him. The human male wore a dark uniform with minimal insignia, and, when he spoke, his words were clipped and precise. This is Captain Marcus Torres of the TCGS Retribution. We have recovered Dr. Sarachun and addressed the hostile force responsible for the attack on New Cambridge. We will be departing your space within the hour. We trust there will be no interference. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. Zethrak's translator struggled with the acronym TCS, but eventually provided a rough interpretation. Terran Central Intelligence Service. Not Navy. Not military in the conventional sense. Intelligence. Captain Torres, Zethrak said, choosing his words carefully. The Galactic Council will want to understand what just occurred here. The weapons you deployed are not registered in any technology database. The Council requires all member species to disclose military capabilities for the purposes of maintaining galactic stability. Torres's expression didn't change. Humanity is not a member of the Galactic Council. We applied for membership 3 years ago. Our application has been stalled in committee. Therefore, we have no obligation to disclose anything to anyone. We came for one of our own. We removed those who harmed our people. We are now leaving. This conversation is a courtesy, not a negotiation. Zethrak felt his respiratory system working harder. This human was not posturing or bluffing. He was simply stating reality as he understood it. The Vrexians will retaliate, Zethrak said. You have destroyed a significant portion of their frontier fleet. They will view this as an act of war. Then, they are welcome to come to Earth and explain themselves, Torres replied. We will be happy to demonstrate additional aspects of our defensive capabilities, or they can accept that humanity is no longer prey and adjust their behavior accordingly. The choice is theirs. The transmission ended. The 3 human ships turned in perfect synchronization and accelerated away from the station. Within minutes, they had jumped to FTL and disappeared, leaving Zethrak alone with the shattered assumptions and a debris field full of questions. What do we tell the Council? Plek asked quietly. Zethrak was silent for a long moment. We tell them the truth. Humanity has been hiding its true strength. We tell them that our initial assessment was catastrophically wrong. And we tell them that we may have just witnessed the emergence of a new apex predator in the galaxy. The young analyst looked at him with wide eyes. Surely not, Commander. They're just one species. The Council represents thousands of civilizations. Humanity cannot challenge the established order. Can they not? Zethrak gestured at the sensor readings, at the impossible energy signatures still radiating from where the battle had occurred. They built weapons we cannot understand, deployed tactics we cannot counter, and accomplished their objective with such efficiency that it appeared effortless. And that ship captain, did you notice his demeanor? There was no bravado, no pride, no anger. Just cold certainty. That is not the behavior of a species testing its limits. That is the behavior of a species that knows exactly how dangerous it is and sees no need to prove anything. Over the following hours, reports began flooding into the Council station from across the sector. The Vrexian High Command was in chaos, demanding answers about how an entire fleet had been destroyed. Human ships were being reported in multiple systems that had previously experienced raids, and, in each case, the pattern was the same. Quick, surgical strikes against Vrexian positions. Overwhelming force, no communication, no negotiation, just systematic elimination of targets. What frightened Zethrak most was the coordination. These were not random revenge attacks by angry colonists. This was a planned, multi-system military operation executed with precision timing, which meant humanity had been planning this, had been ready for this, perhaps for months or even years. A priority message arrived from the Council headquarters on Centris Prime. Zethrak was ordered to compile a comprehensive report on the incident and attend an emergency session of the Security Committee. He spent the next 36 hours reviewing every piece of data, every sensor reading, every communication intercept. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Humanity had not simply developed a few advanced weapons. They had apparently created an entire parallel military infrastructure that operated in complete secrecy. The ships that had appeared were not prototype vessels or experimental craft. They were production models, implying the existence of specialized shipyards and manufacturing facilities that the Council had never detected. More troubling were the energy signatures. Zethrak had served in 3 major conflicts and observed weapons tests from dozens of species. He had seen plasma cannons, particle beams, antimatter missiles, graviton disruptors, and quantum torpedoes. The weapons humanity deployed were none of those things. They operated on principles that his equipment couldn't even properly measure. When he arrived at Centris Prime for the Security Committee meeting, Zethrak found the chamber already filled with delegates from the major council species. The Vrexian representative, a towering figure with scaled hide and predatory eyes, was speaking with barely controlled rage. This unprovoked attack cannot stand. Humanity must be sanctioned, their worlds blockaded, their species brought to heel. They destroyed 20 warships without warning, without declaration of war, without even attempting negotiation. Zethrak listened to this with growing incredulity. Without warning? Representative Thax, your forces destroyed an entire human colony. 6,000 civilians dead. You did this without warning, without declaration of war, without provocation. You did this because you believed humanity was weak and would not respond. You were wrong. Thax's eyes fixed on Zethrak. The Corvan Empire sides with these upstart primates? The Corvan Empire sides with reality, Zethrak replied. I witnessed what humanity is capable of. I reviewed the sensor data. If we move against them with conventional forces, we will lose. It is that simple. The chamber erupted in protests and arguments. The Vrexian delegation demanded action. The Corvan delegation urged caution. Smaller species representatives looked nervous, clearly trying to determine which side of the emerging conflict would be safer. The Council Archon, an ancient Celestian whose species had founded the Council millennia ago, raised a crystalline appendage for silence. When the chamber quieted, the Archon's thoughts resonated directly in everyone's minds, a privilege of their species, powerful psionic abilities. We require more information before making decisions. Commander Zethrak, you have had the most direct observation of human capabilities. What is your professional military assessment? Zethrak stood and projected the data he had compiled onto the chamber's central display. Archon, esteemed delegates, based on what I observed and analyzed, I believe humanity has been systematically underestimated. Their civilian technology appeared primitive because we failed to recognize that they maintain a complete separation between civilian and military development. He brought up the energy readings from the human weapons. These signatures suggest they are manipulating fundamental forces in ways our best scientists cannot explain. The speed with which they eliminated the Vrexian fleet indicates either extremely advanced artificial intelligence or neural interface technology that allows near-instantaneous decision-making. Their FDL interdiction capability alone would require an understanding of space-time mechanics beyond our current theoretical models. Impossible, declared the Vrexian representative. No species develops such capabilities in isolation, especially not within 15 years of first contact. Unless they didn't develop it in 15 years, Zethrak said quietly. What if they developed these systems before they made contact with us? What if their first contact was deliberate, not accidental? What if they have been observing the Council for far longer than we have been aware of them? The implications of this suggestion created a wave of uneasy murmurs through the chamber. If humanity had possessed advanced technology before revealing themselves, it suggested a level of strategic thinking and patience that was deeply concerning. The Archon's thoughts pressed into Zethrak's mind. You believe humanity has been conducting intelligence operations against the Council. I believe it would be foolish to assume they have not been, Zethrak replied. If I were a young species about to make contact with an established galactic civilization, I would spend considerable time studying that civilization first, learning its politics, its military capabilities, its weaknesses. Only then would I reveal myself, and I would reveal only what I wanted others to see. This is paranoid speculation, Fax growled. Is it? Zethrak challenged. Then, explain how they built those ships. Explain how they developed those weapons. Explain how they coordinate operations across multiple star systems without us detecting a single communication. Explain how they found DR. Chen's vessel when her distress beacon was broken and we, with all our sensor arrays, could barely track her life signs. The chamber fell silent. These were questions no one had answers for. Perhaps, the Archon said slowly, we should ask humanity directly. Commander Zethrak, you will lead a diplomatic mission to Earth. You will request an official meeting with human leadership to discuss these events and establish clear parameters for human-council relations going forward. Zethrak felt his respiratory spiracles constrict again. Archon, with respect, I am a military officer, not a diplomat. Precisely why you are suited for this task. The humans will respect someone who understands what they demonstrated. They will see through diplomatic pleasantries and recognize honesty. Go to Earth. Learn what we are dealing with. Report back. There was no refusing an Archon's request. Zethrak bowed his head in acceptance. 3 days later, Zethrak found himself aboard a Council diplomatic vessel approaching Earth's solar system. He had spent the journey reviewing everything humanity had disclosed about themselves since first contact. Their history was fascinating and troubling in equal measure. A species that had gone from primitive agriculture to spaceflight in roughly 10,000 years, with the bulk of that progress compressed into the last 500. They were a violent species, their history filled with wars and genocides and near-extinction events of their own making. Yet they were also capable of remarkable cooperation, of sacrificing individual interests for collective good when sufficiently motivated. They created beauty and horror with equal facility. They were, in many ways, a walking contradiction. The diplomatic vessel entered Earth's solar system and immediately detected the defense grid. Zethrak's tactical displays lit up with warnings. There were weapons platforms everywhere, not just around Earth, but throughout the system. Orbital stations, lunar bases, asteroid fortifications, even satellites around the gas giants. The entire solar system had been turned into a defensive fortress. This is impossible, said his pilot, a young Corvin named Dreth. The resources required to build this infrastructure, the time, the coordination. How did they do this without anyone noticing? Because we were not looking, Zethrak replied. We saw what they wanted us to see. Their civilian shipping, their trade vessels, their diplomatic missions. We never thought to look deeper. A communication channel opened. Council vessel, this is Sol Defense Command. State your purpose. Zethrak took the communication himself. This is Commander Zethrak of the Corvin Empire, representing the Galactic Council. I request diplomatic audience with human leadership to discuss recent events. There was a pause that lasted several minutes. Zethrak imagined layers of human bureaucracy conferring, debating, calculating. Finally, the response came. Permission granted, Commander. You will be escorted to Orbital Station Geneva. Follow the designated flight path exactly. Any deviation will be interpreted as hostile action. Automated drones appeared around the diplomatic vessel, small but radiating dangerous energy signatures. They guided the ship through the system, past Mars where Zethrak could see massive shipyards in various stages of construction, past the moon where military installations glittered on the surface, and, finally, to a large orbital station above Earth itself. The station was beautiful in its way, a fusion of practical engineering and artistic design that seemed very human. Zethrak disembarked with a small security detail and was met by a human woman in a formal suit who introduced herself as Ambassador Patricia Okonkwo. "Welcome to Earth, Commander," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I trust your journey was pleasant." "Enlightening," Zethrak replied carefully. "Your system defenses are impressive. They serve their purpose. Please follow me. The Secretary General is waiting." She led him through the station, which bustled with activity. Humans moved with purpose, their body language radiating confidence. Zethrak noted the presence of armed security at regular intervals, their weapons clearly military-grade. This was not a civilian station. This was a fortress disguised as a diplomatic facility. The Secretary General of the United Nations was an elderly human male named James Patterson. He greeted Zethrak in a comfortable office that looked out over the blue sphere of Earth below. The planet was beautiful, Zethrak had to admit. Swirls of white clouds, vast blue oceans, continents of green and brown. A living world. "Commander Zethrak," Patterson said, gesturing to a chair that had been modified for Corvan physiology. "Please sit. Can we offer you refreshment?" "I am well, thank you." Zethrak settled into the chair, keeping two of his arms free for gesticulation. "Secretary General, I have been sent by the Galactic Council to discuss the incident in the new Cambridge system." Patterson's expression became carefully neutral. "You mean the rescue of Dr. Chun and the elimination of hostile forces that had destroyed one of our colonies? The Vrexian government views it as an unprovoked attack on their military assets." "The Vrexian government can view it however they like," Patterson replied, his voice hardening slightly. "They attacked a civilian colony without warning, without provocation, without mercy. 6,000 of our people died, Commander. Men, women, children, families, communities, all erased because the Vrexians believed we were weak enough to prey upon. The Council regrets the loss of life at New Cambridge. However, the Council also has concerns about the weapons humanity deployed. These systems have never been disclosed to the Council. By treaty, all member species are required to register military capabilities for the purposes of maintaining galactic stability." Patterson leaned back in his chair. "Commander, with all due respect, humanity is not a member of the Galactic Council. We applied for membership 3 years ago. Our application has been under review ever since. We have attended every meeting we've been invited to. We have answered every question put to us. We have opened our worlds to Council observers and complied with every request for information. And yet, our application continues to be stalled. The Council must evaluate many factors before granting membership," Zethrak said. "These processes take time. 3 years, Commander. In that time, we have watched the Council debate the proper wording of our application documents. We have watched as smaller, weaker species with far less to offer have been granted provisional membership in months. We have watched the Council accept our trade goods, our scientific data, our cultural exchanges, all while holding our official status in limbo. Would you like to know what conclusion we reached?" Zethrak remained silent. Sensing this was not truly a question. "We concluded that the Council never intended to grant us full membership," Patterson continued. "We were to be kept as a vassal state, useful but contained. We were to provide resources and labor while being denied a voice in galactic affairs. And when we were attacked by the Vrexians, the Council offered sympathy but no action. Because we do not matter. Because we are not truly part of your civilization." "That is not entirely fair," Zethrak said, but even as he spoke the words, he wondered if they were true. He had been part of the committee that initially reviewed humanity's application. He remembered the debates, the concerns that humans were too volatile, too aggressive, too unpredictable. He remembered delegates arguing that humanity should be observed for several more generations before being granted meaningful status. Isn't it? Patterson stood and walked to the window, looking down at Earth. My planet has a saying, Commander. The strong do what they can. The weak suffer what they must. For 3 years, we have been weak. We have asked politely. We have followed protocols. We have suffered the attacks on our frontier colonies with patience and faith that the Council would eventually provide justice. That faith was misplaced. So you revealed your hidden strength, Zethrak said. You demonstrated that humanity is not weak, that you can defend yourselves, that attacking you carries consequences. Exactly. Patterson turned back to face him. And now the Council is concerned. Now you send a military officer disguised as a diplomat to assess whether humanity poses a threat to galactic stability. Well, Commander, here is our answer. We are not a threat to anyone who does not threaten us. We seek peaceful coexistence, fair trade, cultural exchange, and all the benefits of being part of a galactic community. But we will not be victims. We will not be prey. And we will not apologize for defending our people. Zethrak considered his words carefully. Secretary General, I'm not here to demand apologies. I am here to understand. The weapons your ships deployed, the technology you demonstrated, is far beyond what the Council believed humanity possessed. How long have you had these capabilities? Patterson smiled, and this time there was genuine amusement in it. Commander, you are asking me to reveal military secrets. You know I cannot do that. Then, let me ask differently. Why did you hide your true capabilities? If you had demonstrated this strength from the beginning, the Council would have treated you differently. You would have been granted membership immediately. You would have been respected. Would we? Patterson challenged. Or would we have been feared? Would the Council have welcomed us or sought to contain us? Would we have found allies or enemies? Commander, humanity has learned many lessons from our own history. One of those lessons is that revealing all of your strengths too early can be as dangerous as revealing all of your weaknesses. Zethrak felt his understanding shift again. Humanity had not simply hidden their military technology. They had conducted a sophisticated intelligence operation, revealing only enough strength to be noticed while keeping their true capabilities secret until the moment those capabilities were needed. You have been playing a game, he said slowly. A very long, very patient game. We prefer to think of it as being prudent, Patterson replied. We are new to the galactic stage, Commander. We have no ancient alliances, no historical relationships, no established reputation. All we have is ourselves and what we can build. So yes, we have been careful. We have observed. We have learned. And when we determined that the Council would not protect us, we made arrangements to protect ourselves. The Vrexians will retaliate. They cannot allow this humiliation to stand. Let them try. Patterson's voice was ice. We have something the Vrexians apparently lack, the will to follow through on our threats. They attacked us believing we would file complaints and do nothing. They were wrong. If they attack us again, we will not target a single fleet. We will target their shipyards, their supply lines, their command structures. We will make the cost of aggression so high that they will have no choice but to seek peace. You are describing total war. What do you want from the Council? Zethrak asked. What would it take for humanity to stand down, to de-escalate this situation? Patterson returned to his desk and activated a holographic display. Documents appeared in the air between them. Legal texts written in multiple languages, including Galactic Standard. These are our terms. First, immediate full membership in the Galactic Council with all rights and privileges that entails. No provisional status, no probationary period. Full membership. Second, formal condemnation of Vrexian aggression against human colonies and a council mandate demanding reparations for damages and loss of life. Third, establishment of clear protocols for responding to future attacks on any council member species, including humanity. Fourth, mutual defense agreements with other council species who wish to participate. We will defend our friends as vigorously as we defend ourselves. Zethrak examined the documents. They were professionally drafted, legally precise, and completely reasonable, which was somehow more unsettling than if humanity had made impossible demands. "You have thought this through carefully," he observed. "We have had 3 years to consider our options, Commander. These terms represent the minimum we will accept. We're not asking for special treatment, just equal treatment. We're not demanding control over the Council, just a voice in decisions that affect us. We are willing to contribute our technology, our resources, and our capabilities to the collective defense of Council space. We are willing to be partners, but we will not be subordinates. And if the Council rejects these terms..." Patterson's expression became very serious. "Then humanity will pursue its interests independently. We will establish our own sphere of influence, negotiate our own treaties, build our own alliances. We will become a separate power in the galaxy, neither part of the Council nor subject to its authority. That would not be our preference, but we are prepared for that outcome. You would challenge the entire Galactic Council. We would coexist with the Galactic Council as independent equals. Whether that coexistence is peaceful or hostile would depend on the Council's choices, not ours." Zethrak felt the weight of the moment settling on him. Humanity had just drawn a line in space. They would be recognized as equals, or they would go their own way. And, given what he had seen of their capabilities, they were entirely capable of following through on that threat. "I will present your terms to the Council," Zethrak said. "I cannot promise what their decision will be. We understand. Commander, may I speak frankly, off the record?" Zethrak gestured his assent. "We know the Council sees us as dangerous," Patterson said quietly. "We know our history of violence concerns many species. We know we are young and aggressive and unpredictable by galactic standards. But we are also capable of great loyalty, great sacrifice, and great cooperation when we are treated with respect. We would much rather be the Council's friend than its adversary. We hope the Council will make the wise choice." The meeting ended shortly after. Zethrak was given a tour of the station, shown examples of human culture and technology, and provided with extensive data packages to take back to the Council. Through it all, he could not shake the feeling that he was seeing only what humanity wanted him to see, that beneath the friendly diplomacy and reasonable requests lay something much deeper and more complex. On the journey back to Centris Prime, Zethrak reviewed everything he had learned. He thought about Dr. Chun, drifting alone in the void, refusing to give up even when death seemed certain. He thought about Captain Torres and his cold certainty. He thought about Secretary General Patterson and his reasonable ultimatum. He thought about the impossible weapons and the hidden shipyards and the system-wide defense grid. And he realized that humanity had shown him exactly what they wanted the Council to see. Strength combined with restraint, capability combined with reason, power combined with a genuine desire for peace. It was a masterful display of calculated revelation. When he reached Centris Prime and presented his report to the Security Committee, the response was predictable chaos. The Vrexians demanded immediate military action against humanity. Several other aggressive species seconded this demand. More cautious delegates urged negotiation. The smaller species mostly remained silent, watching to see which way the power would flow. The debate raged for hours. Zethrak provided his analysis when asked, showing the sensor data from the battle, explaining the implications of human technology, outlining the terms humanity had proposed. He tried to remain objective, but he knew his recommendation was clear. The Council should accept humanity's terms. "You ask us to reward aggression," Thax roared. "To give these primates everything they want simply because they demonstrated they have weapons. If we do this, every species in the galaxy will believe they can threaten their way to power." "Representative Thax," Zethrak replied, his voice steady. "Humanity did not threaten their way to anything. They applied for membership through proper channels. They waited patiently while we debated. They only revealed their strength when their colony was destroyed and their people were killed. That is not aggression. That is defense. And if we cannot see the difference, then we have become the very thing we claim to prevent. Bullies who prey on the weak while calling it order. The chamber fell silent. Zethrak had not intended to make a speech, but the words had needed to be said. He had spent his entire career serving the council, believing in its principles of collective security and mutual benefit. But watching humanity's treatment, seeing them attacked while the council did nothing, had forced him to question whether those principles were being applied fairly. The Archon's presence pressed into the room. Commander Zethrak speaks truth that many of us have avoided acknowledging. The Council has not treated humanity fairly. We have kept them at arm's length while accepting their contributions. We have watched their colonies be attacked while offering only sympathy. We have assumed weakness because their technology appeared primitive, never considering that appearance might be deliberate. We have failed in our duty to protect a species that sought to join our community. The Archon's crystalline form seemed to pulse with inner light. I propose we accept humanity's terms in full. They ask for nothing unreasonable. They offer much in return. And they have demonstrated both the power to be dangerous and the wisdom to show restraint. These are qualities we should welcome, not fear. The vote took 2 full days of debate. In the end, humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council by a margin of 63%. The Vrexians and their allies voted against, of course, but they were outnumbered. Humanity had achieved in 3 years what some species took centuries to accomplish. Zethrak was chosen to deliver the news personally, returning to Earth with the official documents granting humanity full council membership. He found Secretary General Patterson in the same office, looking out at the same view of Earth. "The Council has accepted your terms," Zethrak said. "Humanity is now a full member with all rights and privileges. The Vrexian attacks have been formally condemned, and reparations will be negotiated. Welcome to the Galactic Council, Secretary General." Patterson turned, and Zethrak saw something surprising in the human's expression: relief. Genuine relief, as if there had been doubt about the outcome, as if humanity's confidence had not been as certain as it appeared. "Thank you, Commander. And please thank the Archon and all those who supported our membership. We will not disappoint you." "I hope not," Zethrak said honestly. "Secretary General, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Dr. Chun, the woman we watched drifting in space. Did you know her personally?" Patterson's expression softened. "I met her once at a conference on terraforming. She was brilliant, passionate about her work, excited about the possibilities of building new worlds. She had a daughter, 8 years old, who wanted to be a scientist just like her mother. I told my subordinate that she was doomed," Zethrak said quietly. "I watched her ship's systems failing and calculated that rescue was impossible. I dismissed her as a tragedy that could not be prevented. I was wrong." "You were working with the information you had," Patterson replied. "You didn't know that we had rapid response teams positioned throughout the frontier, ships capable of reaching any colony within hours. You didn't know that we track every human vessel in space, that we would move heaven and earth to save even one of our people. You didn't know us. I thought I did. I spent time on Earth during the first contact evaluation. I read your histories, observed your cultures, analyzed your capabilities. I wrote a report concluding that humanity was weak, that you would remain a minor player in galactic affairs. I was catastrophically wrong about everything." Patterson smiled. "Commander, you saw what we wanted you to see. We needed time to build our defenses, to establish our infrastructure, to prepare for the reality of galactic politics. We needed the galaxy to underestimate us until we were ready to be properly understood. You were not wrong to believe what we showed you. You were simply seeing an incomplete picture. The weapons you used against the Vrexians, the technology you have hidden, how much more do you have that we have not seen?" "Enough," Patterson said simply. "Enough to defend ourselves. Enough to defend our friends." Enough to make anyone who considers attacking us think very carefully about whether the cost is worth paying. But, Commander, understand this. We do not want to use those weapons. We built them because we had to, because the universe proved to be more dangerous than we hoped. But we would much rather build hospitals and schools and research stations. We would rather explore than fight, create than destroy, learn than conquer. I believe you, Zethrak said, and he realized it was true. Secretary General, humanity's membership in the Council will change the balance of power in the galaxy. There will be challenges ahead, conflicts between your interests, and those of established members. How do you plan to navigate those difficulties? The same way we have navigated every difficulty in our history, Patterson replied. With determination, creativity, and the absolute refusal to give up. We may be young by galactic standards, Commander, but we have survived ice ages and plagues, wars, and near extinctions, tyranny, and catastrophe. We have pulled ourselves up from caves to the stars through sheer stubborn will. We will find a way forward. We always do. 6 months passed after humanity's admission to the Galactic Council. Zethrak watched as the political landscape shifted and reformed around this new reality. Humanity wasted no time exercising their newfound influence, proposing reforms to council protocols, establishing trade agreements with dozens of species, and quietly building a coalition of smaller civilizations who had long felt overlooked by the council's established powers. The Vrexians, predictably, had not taken their defeat gracefully. They had withdrawn their forces from human-claimed space, but continued to make threats through official channels. The Council had negotiated a reparations package that the Vrexians paid with obvious resentment. There were skirmishes along the borders, probing attacks that tested human defenses, and were consistently repelled. Zethrak had been appointed as the primary Council liaison to humanity, a role that kept him traveling between Centris Prime and Earth. He found himself developing a grudging respect for humans, and something that might have been friendship with several of their diplomats and military officers. They were exhausting to work with, always pushing, always questioning established procedures, always suggesting improvements. But they were also brilliant, creative, and surprisingly honorable in their dealings. It was during one of his regular visits to Orbital Station Geneva that everything changed again. Zethrak was in a meeting with Ambassador Okonkwo when alarms began sounding throughout the station. Security protocols activated, blast doors sealed sections, and armed soldiers appeared in the corridors. "What is happening?" Zethrak demanded. Okonkwo was checking her communication device, her expression grim. "We have a situation. Commander, I need to ask you to come with me immediately. The situation directly involves the Council." She led him through secure corridors to a command center deep within the station. The room was filled with humans working at tactical displays, and on the main screen, Zethrak saw something that made his respiratory spiracles contract with shock. It was a Vrexian fleet, larger than any that had attacked human colonies. 50 warships, including their newest dreadnoughts, moving in battle formation. But they were not heading toward human space. They were heading toward the Kelvari homeworld. The Kelvari were a peaceful species, herbivorous and philosophical, with minimal military capabilities. They had been council members for over 2,000 years and had never been involved in a major conflict. They were also humanity's closest allies in the council, having been among the first to support human membership. "The Vrexians are going to destroy the Kelvari homeworld," Okonkwo said flatly. "Our intelligence suggests this is retaliation for the Kelvari's support of humanity. They want to send a message. Anyone who allies with humans will suffer." Zethrak stared at the display in horror. "The Council must respond immediately. We need to mobilize the defense fleets, establish a protective cordon around the Kelvari system." "The Council is still debating," Okonkwo said, and there was contempt in her voice. "They have been debating for 3 hours while the Vrexian fleet moves into position. Some delegates argue that this is an internal dispute between two member species. Others worry about the cost of intervention. And The Vrexians have made it clear that any Council forces that interfere will be considered hostile. This is madness. The Kelvari have no defenses capable of standing against such a fleet. Millions will die. We know. Okonkwo brought up another display showing 3 human vessels already moving at maximum speed toward the Kelvari system. That's why we're not waiting for the Council to finish debating. Zethrak recognized the ship's signatures. Those are your special operations vessels. The same ones that destroyed the Vrexian frontier fleet. Yes, they'll arrive in approximately 4 hours. The Vrexian fleet will reach the Kelvari homeworld in 5 hours. It will be close. 3 ships against 50, Zethrak said. Those are impossible odds, even with your advanced technology. Commander, when we joined the Council, we made promises. We said we would defend our friends as vigorously as we defend ourselves. The Kelvari stood with us when others would not. Now, it's our turn to stand with them. Numbers don't change that obligation. Zethrak felt something shift in his understanding of humanity. They were not just willing to risk 3 ships. They were willing to risk everything they had gained, all their progress, their entire position in the Council, for a species that most of the galaxy considered strategically unimportant. I need to be there, Zethrak said suddenly. I need to witness this. Why? Okonkwo asked, genuinely curious. Because if humanity is about to reshape galactic politics again, the Council needs an observer who can provide accurate testimony. Too much misinformation has already spread about your capabilities. Whatever happens at the Kelvari homeworld, the galaxy needs to understand the truth. Okonkwo considered this, then nodded. We have a fast courier that can get you there in time. But, Commander, I need to warn you. If things go wrong, if our ships are destroyed, you may find yourself in the middle of a war zone with no way out. I understand the risks. I accept them. The courier ship was small, fast, and uncomfortable for Corvin physiology. But it was also equipped with advanced sensors that let Zethrak monitor the situation as they raced toward the Kelvari system. He watched as the Vrexian fleet entered the system and began its approach toward the planet. He watched as the 3 human ships arrived and positioned themselves between the invaders and their target. Captain Torres's voice came through on the communication channels, broadcasting on all frequencies so that everyone, including the Vrexians, could hear. Vrexian fleet, this is Captain Marcus Torres of the Terran Central Intelligence Service. You are targeting a peaceful civilization that poses no threat to your people. This action violates Galactic Council regulations on warfare and constitutes a crime against sentient life. You have one opportunity to withdraw. If you continue your attack, we will stop you. The Vrexian fleet commander responded with what Zethrak's translator rendered as scornful laughter. 3 human vessels against 50 Vrexian warships. You are either insane or suicidal. Clear our path or be destroyed. Final warning, Torres said, and his voice carried the same cold certainty Zethrak had heard before. Turn back now. The Vrexian fleet did not turn back. They accelerated toward the planet, weapons charging, prepare to reduce the Kelvari homeworld to slag. The 3 human ships did not move, did not retreat, did not flee. They simply waited. Then, reality broke. Zethrak's sensors went haywire as space itself seemed to twist around the human ships. Energy readings spiked to levels that should have been impossible. And, suddenly, there were not 3 human ships. There were hundreds. Impossible, Zethrak whispered. What am I seeing? The courier ship's pilot, a young human woman, spoke without taking her attention from her controls. Quantum projection technology, Commander. Each of our ships can create multiple perfect copies of itself, existing in parallel quantum states. They're all real. They can all attack. They all have independent tactical capabilities. The Vrexian fleet found itself surrounded by a swarm of human vessels, all identical, all targeting different ships simultaneously. The Vrexians tried to fight back, but how do you fight an enemy that exists in multiple quantum states at once? Their weapons passed through some targets without effect while hitting others with devastating results. They couldn't tell which ships were real and which were projections until it was too late. The battle lasted 7 minutes. When it was over, the Vrexian fleet was destroyed. 50 warships reduced to debris and rapidly expanding clouds of gas. The 3 human ships reformed from their quantum projections, apparently undamaged, and took up defensive positions around the Kelvari homeworld. Zethrak's courier ship entered the system to find the Kelvari population in a state of shocked gratitude. Their orbital stations were broadcasting thanks in dozens of languages. Their government was already composing formal statements of appreciation, and the human ships simply maintained their vigil, making sure no other threats emerged. When Zethrak finally got clearance to approach one of the human vessels, he found himself once again facing Captain Torres on a communication screen. "Commander Zethrak," Torres said, "I assume you're here to observe and report?" "Captain Torres, I just watched 3 ships destroy 50 using technology that should not exist. I need to understand what just happened." "We protected our friends," Torres said simply. "That's what happened. At what cost? The Vrexians will view this as an act of war. They will demand council intervention. They may attack Earth itself." "Let them try," Torres replied. "Commander, humanity learned a long time ago that you cannot negotiate with bullies from a position of weakness. The Vrexians believed they could attack anyone they wanted because the council was too slow, too bureaucratic, too concerned with political balance to stop them. They believed that power came from having more ships, more weapons, more willingness to use violence. They were wrong. What you showed today will terrify half the species in the galaxy." "Good," Torres said bluntly. "Terror is sometimes the beginning of wisdom. Every aggressive species that was planning to test humanity's resolve just learned a valuable lesson. Every peaceful civilization that worried they would be left defenseless just saw what humanity will do to protect its friends. And every council member that thought they could ignore our concerns just realized that we have the capability to enforce our principles without asking permission." Zethrak was silent for a long moment. "You are reshaping the entire power structure of the galaxy." "We're establishing boundaries," Torres corrected. "We're making it clear what we will and will not tolerate. We're showing that collective security means something more than debates and resolutions." "Commander, you said once that you believed Dr. Chen was doomed. You watched her ship failing and calculated that saving her was impossible. But we saved her anyway, because that's what you do for your people. Today we save the Kelvari for the same reason. They're our people now. All council members are our people, and we protect our people." The implications crystallized in Zethrak's mind. Humanity had not just joined the Galactic Council. They had appointed themselves as its defenders, its enforcers, its conscience. They had decided that the Council's principles meant something, even if the Council itself seemed to have forgotten that. "The Archon will want to speak with your government," Zethrak said. "We welcome that conversation. But, Commander, make sure the Archon understands. We're not seeking permission for our actions. We're informing the Council of what we have done and what we will continue to do. If the Council has a problem with humanity defending peaceful civilizations from aggression, then perhaps the Council needs to examine its own principles." Zethrak returned to Centris Prime with his report, knowing it would cause upheaval. The Security Committee meeting that followed was explosive. The Vrexians demanded humanity be expelled from the Council and sanctioned for destroying their fleet. Other aggressive species echoed these demands, suddenly aware that their own plans for expansion might face similar resistance. But something unexpected happened. The Kelvari delegation stood and spoke with unprecedented passion, describing how humanity had saved their entire civilization when the Council had merely debated. Then, the representative from the Torvin Collective stood, mentioning how human merchant ships had recently driven off pirates that had plagued their trade routes for decades. Then, the Mirani ambassador stood, thanking humanity for sharing medical technology that had cured a plague the Council had deemed too expensive to address. One by one, representatives from smaller species that the Council's major powers had long overlooked, stood and spoke of humanity's actions. Not all of those actions had been military. Many were humanitarian, technological, cultural. But all of them demonstrated that humanity had kept its promise to be a friend to those who needed friends, a defender to those who needed defense, a partner to those who sought partnership. The vote on whether to sanction humanity failed spectacularly. Instead, the Council passed a resolution formally thanking humanity for defending the Kelvari homeworld and censuring the Vrexian government for initiating an unprovoked attack. The political landscape had shifted again, and this time, Zethrak understood that the shift was permanent. He requested a private meeting with the Archon afterward, seeking guidance on how to process everything that had happened. The ancient Celestian's thoughts were contemplative as they resonated in Zethrak's mind. "You are troubled, Commander. I believed I understood power," Zethrak said. "I spent 3 centuries learning military strategy, studying political structures, analyzing force deployments. I thought I knew how the galaxy worked. Humanity has shown me that I understood nothing." "They have shown all of us many things," the Archon replied. "Some of those lessons have been uncomfortable. They came from nowhere, revealed themselves cautiously, allowed us to underestimate them, and then demonstrated capabilities we cannot match. Now they are reshaping the Council to fit their vision of what it should be. Archon, are we watching the emergence of a new galactic hegemon?" The Archon was silent for a long moment, their crystalline form pulsing with inner light. "I have lived for 6,000 years, Commander. I have seen species rise and fall, empires expand and collapse, civilizations achieve greatness and descend into irrelevance. I have learned that power takes many forms, and the species that endure are not always those with the strongest weapons. Humanity has the strongest weapons. Humanity has impressive weapons," the Archon corrected. "But that is not their true strength. Their strength lies in something more fundamental. They believe their principles mean something. They believe friendship matters, that promises should be kept, that the weak deserve protection not because it is profitable, but because it is right. These are not new ideas, Commander. These are the founding principles of the Galactic Council, principles we established thousands of years ago. We simply forgot them somewhere along the way." Zethrak felt the truth of this settling into his consciousness. So humanity is not reshaping the Council. They're reminding us what it was supposed to be. Perhaps they're showing us what it could become. The future is unwritten, Commander. Humanity's arrival has opened new possibilities, both promising and dangerous. Whether they become a force for good or ill will depend on choices still to be made, by them and by us. Years passed. Zethrak continued his work as humanity's liaison, watching as they integrated fully into galactic society. They established colonies, built trade networks, shared their technology selectively and strategically. They fought when necessary, but more often they negotiated, compromised, and found solutions that served multiple interests. The Vrexians eventually sued for peace, their government having concluded that continuing conflict with humanity was unsustainable. Other aggressive species likewise moderated their behavior, discovering that predation was no longer cost-free. The galaxy became, incrementally and imperfectly, a somewhat safer place. Zethrak found himself thinking often about Dr. Chun, the woman whose near death had triggered this entire chain of events. She had recovered from her ordeal and returned to her work, continuing her research on terraforming. He learned that she had been awarded the Council's highest civilian honor for her contributions to xenobiology. She had also testified before the Security Committee about her experience drifting in space, describing how she had refused to give up hope even when hope seemed irrational. "I knew my people would come for me," she had said. "I knew they would find a way. That's what humans do. We find a way." One day, Zethrak encountered her at a scientific conference on Centris Prime. She was presenting research on adaptive ecosystems, and her enthusiasm was infectious. After her presentation, he approached her. "Dr. Chun, I am Commander Zethrak. We have not met formally, but I was observing your situation when your ship was damaged at New Cambridge. She looked at him with interest. Commander, yes, I've heard about you. You're humanity's primary council liaison. I should thank you for your advocacy on our behalf. I did very little, Zethrak said honestly. I merely reported what I observed. Dr. Chun, may I ask you something? When you were drifting in space, when your systems were failing, did you truly believe rescue was possible? Or were you simply refusing to accept the inevitable? She considered the question carefully. Both, I think. I knew the mathematics were against me. I knew the Vrexian fleet was nearby, that rescue would be dangerous. But I also knew that humans don't abandon each other. We're stubborn that way. So yes, I believed rescue was possible, even when it seemed impossible, because belief was the only thing that kept me functioning. Does that make sense? More than you know, Zethrak replied. Dr. Chun, I told my subordinate that you were doomed. I calculated that saving you was impossible. I was wrong about that, and wrong about so many other things. Your species has taught me that stubbornness, applied intelligently, can reshape reality. She smiled. Commander, humanity's greatest gift is not our technology or our weapons. It's our absolute refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible. We've dragged ourselves up from caves to the stars through sheer determination. We've survived catastrophes that should have ended us. We've built wonders that shouldn't exist. And we did it all because we were too stubborn to admit defeat. I'm glad we could share that perspective with the galaxy. As Zethrak watched Dr. Chun return to her colleagues, surrounded by scientists from a dozen species, all eager to discuss her research, he realized that this was humanity's real victory. Not the battles they had won, not the weapons they had revealed, but the way they had inspired other species to expect more from themselves and from the Council. He had believed humanity was weak. He had believed Dr. Chun was doomed. He had believed the galaxy's power structures were unchangeable. Humanity had proven every one of those beliefs wrong, not through force alone, but through determination, principle, and an unshakable faith that things could be better. Zethrak had spent his entire life in service to the Galactic Council, believing he was protecting civilization and maintaining order. Now he understood that sometimes civilization needed not protection, but renovation, not maintenance, but transformation. Humanity had arrived like a storm, disrupting comfortable patterns and forcing uncomfortable questions. But storms, while destructive, also cleared the air and brought new growth. The galaxy would never be the same. And looking at Dr. Chun laughing with her colleagues, at the peaceful integration of species that had once been adversaries at the council chambers where representatives now spoke with renewed commitment to justice rather than mere political expedience, Zethrak decided that perhaps this change was exactly what the galaxy needed. He had believed she was doomed. Then, her tribe had turned their eyes on him, on the council, on the entire galactic order, and everything had changed. In the end, Dr. Chun had been saved, the Kelvari had been defended, and the galaxy had been reminded that principles mean nothing if they are not defended with action. Humanity had taught them all a lesson, that stubbornness, courage, and refusal to accept injustice could move even the stars themselves. And the galaxy, reluctantly at first, but with growing conviction, had begun to learn. We are describing self-defense taken to its logical conclusion. The Vrexians can choose peace at any moment. All they must do is stop attacking us. If they cannot make that simple choice, then, yes, we will go to war. And we will win. Zethrak believed him. There was no bravado in Patterson's voice, no anger, no pride. Just the same cold certainty that Captain Torres had displayed. Humanity had calculated the costs, determined they were acceptable, and committed themselves to a course of action.